If you spend more than 10 minutes with me, there's a pretty good chance quantum physics is going to be talked about.
20 minutes and UFOs are on the table. Half an hour and we are dead ass into ghosts territory.
I love me a good ghost story. Probably because as a Cuban American child, I was raised with the occult. It's just part of my life.
Along with my Walter Mercado Saint candle and a gallon of Cuban coffee. A love of all things supernatural is an innate part of who I am. Even as a young child, terrified of what I was seeing, I just could not turn away.
Bon appetit, bitch.
My father was an exterminator for our family's business, and then as now in South Florida,
bugs equal big money. So seeing someone in that kind of khaki uniform was the subconscious safe place for me, which I think is why Ghostbusters felt like home so early on and why it always has since then. It always reminded me of my dad in profession and attitude, the coolest guy ever. A guy who is now gone. I guess in a way when I'm sitting in the theater revisiting my old friends, for that moment, Dad's there again. The PKE meter is ridiculous, but in the best way. It looks like if someone took a Geiger counter and added the ability for it to be an ice cream scooper.
The PKE meter measures what in the movies is referred to as
psychokinetic energy.
Basically a form of psychic or conscious energy that can have an effect on physical objects.
Kind of like a metal detector except for ghosts.
Which is a decent enough explanation under normal circumstances, I guess.
This is what makes time travel possible. The flux capacitor.
But come on, science is this channel's whole thing. So even if this topic is absurd, I mean, this is Ghostbusters, we have to go down the road of the absurd. Because even the most outrageous science fiction, and sometimes even supernatural stories,
have a little bit of legitimate science mixed in too.
Fun fact, ghosts are a term commonly used in physics to describe a known unknown. I don't know what's causing all these galaxies to form in a cluster. They don't appear to have enough mass to do that, but there must be something there because it's gravitationally lensing light the way a heavy object like a black hole would. Let's just call it dark matter for now.
Spooky action at a distance is something Einstein dreamed up during one of his nerd daydreams. He called them thought experiments.
He realized that two or more particles can be linked in such a way that you can know the state of one by knowing the state of the other. Make a change to one, the other instantly changes too. Kind of like the codependent relationship your mom has had with each of her 8 husbands. It doesn't matter how far apart they are. Opposite sides of the universe even. And because this violates the first commandment of physics, Einstein called it spooky action at a distance and locked it away in a brass ball next to Garaka. Okay, so what does quantum entanglement spooky action at a distance have to do with ghosts? Well, here are 2 speculative guesses I have.
There are studies being conducted by neurologists, brain doctors, with quantum physicists, scientists who study the smallest things in the universe, that hint to the possibility that human consciousness is not entirely biological. They think that the brain possibly uses quantum entanglement to communicate between neurons, which is how it happens so quickly, and that consciousness is possibly a byproduct of that interaction.
And as with all quantum processes, space and time kind of mean nothing at those scales. So essentially, you're, in the words of Carl Sagan, an expression of the universe knowing itself.
TLDR, your mind is basically a quantum state of energy and can't be destroyed. And if that's the case, then it stands to reason that some version of your consciousness persists.
Potentially encoded into an object you had a strong psychokinetic bond with, a place, or even the universe itself. But a disembodied consciousness isn't enough to manifest a ghost, is it?
After all, is it even there if you don't have a way to interact with it?
Thankfully, quantum entanglement has one more trick up its sleeve.
Again, I have to warn you with a possible bullshit alert. We're heading into the frontier of fiction here, but let's try to sprinkle a bit of truth on it. Let's say these ghosts are able to take advantage of this kind of quantum entanglement. It means you'd now have a way to see and communicate with them, and since quantum entangled particles were created by the boatload at the Big Bang, it's therefore possible that you and I and the dog and the library ghost all have entangled particles within us, meaning that there exists the potential for the kind of entanglement that could bring about and allow a person to see and experience a haunting.
Get her!
Okay, so now we have a way for ghosts to exist and we have a way to see and communicate with them, but how are they touching stuff? Probably the easiest way to think about this is by comparing ghosts
to the beings they came from, us. You and I are made of some protons and neutrons, a ton of empty space, and then a cloud of electrons.
We're basically made up of empty space, which is interesting when you consider that you can touch a light switch, stand up on the floor without falling through it, and kiss your lover.
Oh, baby.
This is where electrostatic repulsion comes in. Let's say you're a Ghostbuster. You grab your neutronal wand to catch a ghost. The electrons in the molecules that make up your hand repel the electrons in the molecules of the handle of the neutronal wand. And since your hand surrounds the handle of the wand, you feel a pressure, which your brain registers as touch.
Two in the box.
Ready to go.
We be fast and
They be slow.
Electrostatic repulsion is a pretty solid way to explain how PKEs like telekinesis,
or moving an object without touching it, might work. By essentially allowing you to use your brain to affect free-floating electrons and condense enough of them in a way that enables you to take advantage of electrostatic repulsion to touch something non-physically. But let's say you're a ghost. You don't necessarily have a physical body, and your existence is that of a formless fart cloud of energy that really only takes shape in the quantum entangled minds of nearby observers. Like most things in reality, but especially in your case, it can't be objectively said that you exist.
However, like most things we observe, ghosts in the Ghostbusters universe appear to have a slightly negative electrical charge overall.
Remember, every molecule and atom in your body is surrounded by a cloud of negatively charged electrons. And if you remember playing with a magnet and iron shavings in your grade school science class, you'll remember the two magnets with the same charge will repel each other.
Now, ghosts don't have a physical body anymore, and in these movies are said to be a manifestation of psychic or PKE energy.
Have you come to offer yourself in sacrifice?
What?
You can sometimes see them and communicate with them, and their lack of a physical body makes them low density enough to be able to pass through solid objects without worrying about electrostatic repulsion. Now, psychokinetic phenomenon, like in the world of these movies, appears to work by harnessing free-floating electrons and utilizing them through the effects of electrostatic repulsion.
As more PKE energy builds up as created by the rising emotions of nearby humans, ghosts gain the ability to utilize these electrons generated and manifested by said PKE to take advantage of electrostatic repulsion and grab physical objects like people and nearby courtroom tables?
There you have it. How could a ghost potentially exist, and what would it be made of given what we know about them from 5 Ghostbusters movies and some creative applications of real science based on what the movies have shown us?
I know I've been hedging with my explanations along the way, and there's a very important reason for that. When the unknown is concerned, whether in the world of science or the supernatural, it's really easy to cherry-pick data to arrive at whatever conclusion you want.
Wish fulfillment is one of the most basic tenets of what it means to be human. But science isn't a belief system, it's not a political ideology, it's not even a culture, it's a process. We use this process to learn the truth about the world around us and how it and things within it work. You start out with an educated guess based on what you can see and measure, and take it from there. Ultimately, through a series of experiments and peer review, you arrive at an answer. Maybe it's the one you thought you'd get, maybe you find out you were completely off your rocker. Either way, science helps us get to the objective truth.
Okay, that was long and preachy, and you can go f yourself for judging me, but here's the thing. Ghostbusters has been near and dear to my heart for almost all 41 years of my life. Not just because of the movie itself, but because of all the things I love it reminds me of. Science, the paranormal, nostalgic childhood memories, my dad. That kind of weight on a subject can make us forget to remain objective, and while this video isn't entirely based on objective science,
I think it's a great opportunity for an exercise in creatively learning about phenomena that are based on actual science by figuring out how they would apply to the more science fiction-y elements of these movies.
because even in fiction, there's a grain of truth. There's always room to learn new facts. After all, religious and cultural dogmas aren't
The only types of belief systems that can get in the way of finding an objective truth. Scientific dogmas are too. Sometimes the establishment beliefs aren't entirely figured out. Sometimes they're flat out wrong. Science isn't just about finding the truth, but about being a good sport when you realize you were wrong or not entirely right.
That was really stupid.
Which brings us to the last bit about Ghostbusters that we can't ignore. Slime.
I honestly struggled with this one because ectoplasm is what these ghosts are supposedly made of, except I couldn't think of any way to describe them using any number of theories that isn't completely absurd. In nature, ectoplasm is just the name for the outer membrane of single-celled creatures like amoeba. However, in the spiritual community, it was created as a type of theatrical flair to make Victorian seances seem more sensational, and was widely disproven as a real phenomenon around that same time.
So instead of science, I've created this ectoplasm bukkake montage.
You hose him, please.
He slimed me.
I am my drippings with goo.